Ask the Recruiter, and I'm going to, do you want me to introduce myself and talk a little bit about what a recruiter does? And then I'm open to any questions. Okay. So I'm an independent recruiter, and some of my clients include Disney, like Blue Sky, Lucas Animation, Digital Domain, Framestore, Fox, and Paramount. And a recruiter works for the company. We're hired by companies to help them fill open positions. A recruiter does not represent talent. Although the recruiter does not represent you as a talent, you want to make sure that recruiters know who you are, and you need to connect with recruiters to let them know that you exist. If a recruiter contacts you, because we will, you should respond in a timely way, even if you don't need a job or you're not interested in making a change. And the reason to do that is because you want to develop good relationships with recruiters for future opportunities. You want to get on the recruiter's good side. You can build a relationship by referring someone even if you're not interested in the job. If a recruiter, even if you're not interested in working with a recruiter, you want to make it easy for a recruiter to contact you. So make sure that your current contact info is on everything that you have, your resume, your website, your portfolio, your reels. A lot of times recruiters will find a candidate who is absolutely fantastic, but there's no way to contact them, and it's very frustrating for them. Sometime in your career, a recruiter might be able to help you to move up, or make you aware of opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily hear about otherwise. So that's one reason to get in touch with recruiters. If a recruiter contacts you and wants to submit you as a candidate, it's super important for you, if you want to pursue the job, to get the materials the recruiter needs to very quickly. Being easy to hire usually indicates that you're easy to work with. And attitude really matters. So have a great attitude and be professional. That's super important. Even though a recruiter doesn't represent you, an employer might ask a recruiter about you, and you want that to be a positive report. The recruiter works for the company and is paid by a company. An agent works for you and is paid by you. But neither a recruiter nor an agent should charge you to submit you. Today I was at a Chinese restaurant and I got this fortune cookie message. You're soon going to change your present line of work. So sometime in your career, this will be true for you, which is why you need to know recruiters. A recruiter is hired by a company to find people like you. The company has jobs that they would need filled by people like you. And here's my secret tip. If you see an ad for a recruiter, you want to be sure to get your work into that company as soon as possible, because that company is going to be hiring a lot of people. So I wanted to also let you guys know that if I don't get to your questions, that you can reach me at pamrecruit@gmail.com. So pamrecruit@gmail.com. And I'm open to any questions that anybody might have.
Yeah, we already got a couple questions in here. I'll go ahead and read them to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Matt.
Our first question is asking, what's the best way to contact a recruiter for job opportunities?
Probably the best way to find recruiters is either on a company's website or through LinkedIn. Just search for recruiters with your with the company that you want to work for. And their contact info should be up there.
The next question is asking, for any up-and-coming artists looking to work in a big studio, would it be risky to create topical animation in regards to politics, even if it's well animated or drawn?
I don't really think it's risky. You may consider doing something other than, unless you want to be a political cartoonist, you may want to choose something else to animate. just so that you don't offend anybody in any way. I mean, why eliminate yourself or even risk that being eliminated? However, for your own personal work, why not? Why not amuse yourself by creating something? I once was recruiting for a company that did educational children's videos, and a reel that I really liked showed a woman fully dressed, and then this big windstorm came up, and first the wind was moving her clothes around, and then the wind moved her skin, some of her clothes fell off and moved her skin around, and then her skin flew off, and then her bones were moving around, and I thought it was fabulous. And I submitted it to this children's educational children's place, and they did not like that video because it showed a woman's naked parts moving around with the wind. I thought it was very amusing, but they didn't. So they didn't hire the person, but I thought it was great animation. So you never know. So, but.
Our next question is asking, what do you take into account when you're recruiting people from outside the US?
A company that is recruiting from outside the US, they have to be able to be big enough in order to have, deal with the visas. So if you need a visa, you're going to have to apply to a company that is large enough to have immigration attorneys on either as staff people or on a retainer in order to deal with a visa situation. So it's going to take a bit longer.
Do you have any recommendations? Oh, sorry. Do you have any recommendations for starting that process?
You can apply. So one of the things that you need to do is to make sure that you have special skills that cannot be found ordinarily. One of the things that you might do is apply for a company where they have a branch in your country. So if, for example, a lot of American companies have branches in, they're all over, they're global. So they might have a branch in India, they might have a branch in Europe. So you might try doing getting a local job and then doing a transfer if you are keen to work in the US. So that's a possibility of working it that way.
Cool, thank you. This next question is asking, is it better to have a social media account with your art or a personal website for your art?
I like to have a personal website, but you can link your social media to your website, but you're always going to be able to control your website. And who knows, I mean, social media can change, and then what will happen to all of your work. So I would err on the side of having your own personal website instead, because you have control on that. You don't necessarily have control on whatever happens with any social media channels.
That makes a lot of sense. This next question is asking, do you know of an effective way to network with peers and possible employers?
Yes, especially now it's very difficult to network in person. So that's one of the things that's really great that you guys are attending TM Expo, because you can network at least virtually. One of the keys to networking online is through social media, and also through LinkedIn, which is a social media channel that is for the more professional aspect. And I really believe in LinkedIn. I'm going to be talking about LinkedIn tomorrow. And so you can really, it's a very powerful tool, and to network with your peers. There's different groups on LinkedIn and so forth that you can network there. So I really recommend that.
This next question is asking, is it possible to be contacted by a recruiter even if I do not live in the same country?
Yes, I've contacted people all over the world as a recruiter. One of the things that's really great about social media and LinkedIn is I can follow you. A friend of mine who used to be a recruiter at DreamWorks sent out postcards to people when they applied. And I said, send that postcard to me. If you move, give me your new contact info. If you change your email address. So if you change address, contact the recruiter and let them know. Sorry, it's not COVID, it's just a dry throat.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. You can take a second to take a sip of water if you need to.
Yeah, thank you.
While you do that, I'll go ahead and read off this next question.
Okay.
It's asking if a recruiter's email is on their LinkedIn, is it appropriate just to cold email them directly?
Yes. That's why they have it on their LinkedIn so that you can contact them. Yes. Do not be afraid to contact a recruiter. We want to find you. We want to make contact with you. Recruiters make money by helping companies find people, and the people are you. So don't be shy about contacting recruiters. They may take a while to get back to you because they might be super busy, but they are interested in contacting you and talking to you.
To sort of build off that question, is there like an appropriate message that you should have in your email that you're sending to recruiters?
I think if it's clear what kind of job you're looking for, or if whatever your experience is, I mean, you could do a really brief intro when you reach out to a recruiter. Say why you want to work for that particular company, if they're work for a certain company. If they're a type of company, like say a DreamWorks recruiter, mention why you want to work for DreamWorks.
Very cool. Before I move on to the next question, I think someone asked something in the chat that's asking if there's like a fee or like a charge for approaching recruiters.
No, so a recruiter and an agent should never charge you upfront about anything. A recruiter is not going to charge you if you are a talented artist. A recruiter charges the company to help them find people. They are paid by a company. So yes, they'll charge you if you own a small animation company and you're building up your staff. In that case, yes, a recruiter will work with you to help you find people. But a recruiter, if you're just an artist looking for work, you should never be charged by a recruiter for anything.
Right, so recruiters work for the studios.
Yeah, recruiters work for studios.
Great. This next question is asking, what makes you likely to respond or not respond to someone who reaches out to you?
Well, I respond to everybody that reaches out to me, or at least I try to. I may be behind in some of my LinkedIn requests, but I just caught up last night, so thank you for that. I have a few more to answer today, but the biggest response is if they have a particular opening. Let's say they're looking for a traditional animator and you're a traditional animator. Well, they're going to respond to you pretty quickly. If you're a compositor or a color stylist or something like that or whatever, they may take longer to respond because they don't have that particular opening that they're looking for. But they, a lot of times they will respond. It's going to be difficult. Some of them have an auto response on their thing if they work for a company. So you might get a note auto responding to you. But if you send in some work or something like that, and they have that particular opening, you should be hearing from them pretty soon, I would hope, because they don't want you to go off and work for someone else. right, if they need you in
And this
your
next
skill set.
question, oh, sorry.
That's okay.
This next question is asking, what would you like to see on a resume or portfolio for someone who's looking into becoming a production assistant for a project?
First off, I want to make sure that they are clear that on their resume of what they're looking for. So if you put your name and then production assistant right below it, it's really clear what you're looking for. That's great. And then, of course, the way to contact you and any particular work that might have. If you haven't worked as a production assistant before somewhere, if you've worked on a team with people or a team project of any kind, something to show that you have some work experience is good. So that's why internships, I mean, I wish I had done an internship and known about an internship when I was in school. That would have been helpful just to learn about different jobs and possibilities of different jobs. So I really recommend internships if you're able to have one. Take it and work as hard on it as you possibly can, because a lot of times internships turn into jobs. So.
Yeah, well, internships also provide an excellent form of networking, which I think might lead into this next question, which they're asking, I've heard that most of the time you need to know someone in the studio to have a chance at working for a studio. Do you feel like this happens a lot?
Yes, it does. And also a lot of times studios, you won't hear about a job except for through a friend of a friend of a friend or whatever. I have an example of that. I am a member of Women in Animation and went to, back in the day before COVID and when you could meet in person, I went to a Women in Animation meeting, and as I walked in the door, a woman at the door told me that a woman named Libby was looking for a production manager. And I said, well, I wasn't available, but I saw a friend of mine at that meeting and told her, Connie, about it. And she said, well, I'm not available, but my sister is. And so my sister, that sister of Connie's, started working for the woman who was looking for the production manager in like 3 days after that meeting. So that's how networking can work. So it's really important to network. And yes, one of the ways that you can make connections at different companies is on LinkedIn. You can search for people who work there and make connections, or come to a place like CTN and network as you can virtually here, and ask people, get to know them. But networking is really important in getting work. I agree with that.
We're getting a question about women in animation. I put a link in the chat, but are there chapters in other countries for women in animation?
Yes, there are many chapters, and if you look on the womeninanimation.org website, they'll have a list of chapters. And you can also start chapters if there isn't one as well. Women in Animation is for women and men. When it was started back in the 90s, it was started because women had particular issues with moving up in animation, and so that's one of the reasons why it was named Women in Animation. However, there are lots of men who are members and who have been part of leadership in Women in Animation as well. So it's open to both, and it's also open to people all over the world.
Very nice. You preemptively answered my next question, which is, do you have to be a woman to be in WIA? And no, you don't.
No.
Going back,
have, there's links on, there's a LinkedIn group, and I believe there's also a Facebook group of Women Animation. So.
Going back to internships, do you think there's going to be online internships available for students during now times with COVID times?
There probably will be. I mean, it's interesting with COVID. I remember recruiting for Disney, and everybody wanted everyone to be in-house, on-site, and working, so that they could have control. And now with with what happened now, a lot of the studios have found that people can work, not only do they work well at home, but they also are productive at home, sometimes even more productive at home, because you don't have all the meetings interruptions and all that, and you're more focused. So I think that it's going to possibly open up a lot more opportunities for people to work at a lot of different studios, no matter where they work. The visa issue might not even be such a big issue. For example, there's a studio that is going to be working on a 2D animated film, and as far as countries to recruit from, I mean, there are no bans or bars on anything, because they can work from people can work from anywhere. The only problem is having a great internet connection, and that's it. I mean, it does nothing. There's no problem anymore with that. And I think the same thing will with internships. I mean, the same thing is happening with production management. I mean, people are, managing a production from their house. Recruiters have been recruiting from their house forever, but all of Nickelodeon, the entire studio, people are working from home. So
we have a couple of similar questions here, so I'm going to kind of combine them into what's a good way to stand out when it comes to getting attention from recruiters?
A good way to stand out is to have a clear idea about what kind of work you want to do. Have your portfolio and everything else, that your reel and everything show that that's what you're doing, what you're interested in, and just be really focused on that. It makes it really simple. If you're a journalist, then it's a different kind of portfolio, but be clear on whatever it is you're doing. And also, if you have work that looks just like the kind of work that the company is doing, whether it's, so for example, if you do photoreal type stuff, you can go with a company that does visual effects that's photoreal. If you do cartoony type stuff, you'd be more along the lines of a Pixar, because they don't do photoreal stuff. So know what kind of work the company is looking for, and gear your work to that. So if you're applying to a company that makes commercials, maybe you make a fake commercial and have that on you.
You talked about having your contact information and your job title prominent, so it's easy to know what people are looking for. Do you feel like phone numbers are also a good piece of information to have?
Yes. Yes. Make sure that your email address is on there. If you have a website, make sure that your website is working and that it's not down. That's important, and that it loads fast. Also, make it easy to view. Make it really simple, and don't use like super small type font, or have a lot of extraneous graphics on your stuff, so that people can read it really easily.
As a recruiter, when you're looking at people's works, does it matter if they've been to school or have had previous experience in the industry?
It doesn't. It actually just, the work is what stands out. I mean, a reason to have, there's a couple of reasons for school. One is that you build your skills. If you can't work on it by if you don't have the discipline to work on it by yourself, having school assignments sometimes helps. Also, choosing your school that might have equipment that you don't have, or instruction that you may not be able to get in any other way. Also, networking with people who go to your school, obviously that's another plus for going to school. But we're not really, the first thing that we look at is the work, and then we look at the resume and where you might have gone to school or whatever, but it really doesn't matter. I think we hired, I worked on The Simpsons, and one of the persons that we hired was self-taught, so he had never gone to school at all. it just depends on the work, really.
This next question
You
is
really
asking,
don't care what age you are, or what you look like, or anything. To be honest, I mean, I don't. So
so it's kind of like all dependent on your body of work, your portfolio.
and that's
This-
why it's important to put your best stuff up front. Always have your best stuff first, because recruiters and other people who are looking at your work, they might not ever get, if you have it at the end, they may never get to it, because they're going to say they're just going to move on to the next portfolio. So always put it first, the best stuff first.
This next person is saying that their portfolio isn't done, or they don't feel like it's quite ready yet. Do you think it's still a good idea for them to reach out to recruiters just so they can follow them and watch them grow?
I think that you feel like it's not ready yet. It probably isn't ready yet. However, you can reach out to a recruiter just to say hi and to say, I'm working on my portfolio, but I wouldn't necessarily show it yet if you really feel it's not ready. However, there have been instances, like on The Simpsons, we had a guy who is still working on The Simpsons. He took the 4 tests. He wasn't quite ready. He took 4 different tests we had, and they gave feedback on the tests. A couple of months later, he took those 4 tests again, got some more feedback, and then a couple of months later, he listened to the feedback, and a couple of months later, when he took the test again, they finally hired him, and he's still working on The Simpsons, and he was hired in 1990. So that's he's been on it for a long time. But yes, he really, 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 really wanted to have the job, and he listened to feedback and was able to get the job there. So, but I would advise against, submitting a lot of work right up front if you're not ready for a job.
Where can you easily find recruiters for animation?
You can do a Google search. You can go on LinkedIn and do a search there. Just say recruiter animation. There's a lot of recruiters that work in animation, and also a lot of the companies, large companies, all have in-house recruiters, but there's a lot of independent recruiters as well, besides me. And you can just do a Google search. I'm sure they'll come up. But I hope with their SEO they should come up.
This next question is asking, at some studios, you have to fill in some documents before you apply. And one time they were asked if they were eligible to work in the US. Since they don't live in the US currently, should they answer that question with no?
If they're not a US resident or have a green card or a visa that allows them to work in the US, they should say no, because they're obviously not eligible. However, they can also put that they are willing to apply for a visa, etc.
Very cool. Thank you. We're getting another group of similar questions, which is, how long should you wait to follow up on sending in an application?
That's a great question. Yes. Well, first off, you should wait a week to check in to make sure that they received it and it was going through the process. So check in a week, and then because their situations change often, you should check back about every 6 to 8 weeks with someone if you really want to work company, because their requirements might change. Your kind of position might start getting open. like on a feature, if you are a storyboard artist, you're going to be working up front. So as soon as a project is announced, you probably should get your stuff in. But if you are a cleanup artist or a compositor or lighter or something like that down the road, kind of type work, your position won't be open for a while. Right. So every 6 to 8 weeks, probably follow up.
We talked a little bit about if you needed a degree to apply for a job. This one's kind of similar, where they're saying that a lot of job applications are asking for experience. If your portfolio is good enough, is that really important?
Well, yes. Okay, so I have found that personally and as a recruiter both, I have 2 different stories about how job descriptions sometimes lie. My experience as a recruiter, I once recruited for a company where this was years ago, where a company was looking for somebody with 5 to 7 years experience with Alias software. At that time, Alias software had only been out for 3 years. So you couldn't have 5 to 7 years experience with the Alias software. And they also wanted to have a person who had experience working in a TV or film feature production pipeline. I submitted a person who had some experience with Alias software, who was a student straight out of school, no work experience at all, none, but had a fantastic reel, okay, great work. I also submitted a person who had work experience in TV and feature film to the same company, who had the Alias background that they wanted as well. The company hired both of those people, both the student with no experience and the person who had some television and film production experience. My other thing about job descriptions lying is years ago, I applied for a job at Hanna-Barbera back in the day when stamps were super cheap and Hanna-Barbera was still around. And it was a very highfalutin job. It was like a VP of development or something. I had about 10% what the job description called for. I grew up with Hanna-Barbera cartoons, so I thought, what the heck, I'll apply for this job. Well, lo and behold, they interviewed me. They called me in for an interview. I went into Hanna-Barbera. I saw the interior of Hanna-Barbera. It was so cool. And I wasn't prepared for the interview. I didn't get the job, but the fact was that they thought that I had enough qualifications to interview. I only had 10% of what they had on the job description. So that was kind of an eye-opener for me. You should never eliminate yourself for a job if you really want it. Just
That's some really good information.
So apply, let them eliminate you. That's why I always tell all my career coaching clients, just apply and let them take care of whether or not they feel like you're qualified. If they're interviewing you, they feel like that you're qualified for the job. So.
Very good advice. We're having a couple questions about cover letters. How important are they and what should be on them?
Well, a cover letter is pretty important. It kind of gives an indication of your personality when you write it. And one of the things that's really important, if you have any kind of connection at all with the company that you're applying to, whether you love their work, you can mention that in it. If you were referred by somebody within the company or someone that has worked for the company or is working for the company, that's really a great thing to mention. Well, Matt from CTN referred me to you guys, for example. That's a really good thing to put in if he has, a connection to the company. So, yeah. And one of the things that if you don't know who to address it to, you can always address it to the head of the company. Dear Mr. Gates, I've always wanted to work for Microsoft because it'll get to the right person. So always address it to somebody in particular. Make sure that you have the right person and put the right letter into the right envelope. You want to make sure that the DreamWorks cover letter goes to DreamWorks and the Disney and not confuse the two. That's happened a lot. So yeah, point out why you want to, the main thing is point out why you want to work for that particular place. Feed their ego. They'd always love to hear that you have done your research and that you know their product and that why you want to work there. It's a way for you to stand out.
Moving from cover letters to resumes, do you feel like it's professional to put art on your resume?
If a resume is being scanned, so a lot of times that they have this scan situation where your resume is put into a database, and when they scan it, if your artwork interferes with some of the information on there, it's going to scan well, and it may impede your application. So I would possibly attach artwork instead of having it as part of your resume.
And what about descriptions in your resume? Should you just have your job title, or should you also include what your responsibilities were?
Yeah, include descriptions, definitely. And also especially accomplishments. Like if you've saved the company money, if you were able to speed up any processes, if you were able to, how many people did you manage if you were a lead or something like that, or how much footage did you produce that week or on a weekly basis, or any of those kinds of things. Think about any kind of a quantifiable, measurable accomplishment that you might have had.
What's the difference between a resume and a CV?
A CV is probably more detailed. It also usually includes a photo of yourself, and often will have statistics like whether you're married and your birth date and all that kind of stuff, which on a resume you don't have. And a CV often is more for academic positions as well. In the US, it's illegal to ask any questions about your marital status, your gender, your age, any of those kinds of things. And it also is irrelevant to a job. So all of that really doesn't matter.
We're getting some more questions about visas, work visas, and green cards. Are you familiar with the process for applying for those at all?
I have dealt with that a little bit when I was a manager of art at Virgin Games. And one of the things that I know that helps is to get press, make yourself stand out as a special person. So if you can get someone to write about you in a media publication, that was one of the things that all the game guys were always, the game guys that we had that were British, they were always very keen to be interviewed by the press, because that helped with their visas and towards their green card applications. So I would advise people make connections with reporters in the press and get written up. And wherever you are, that will help.
We have a couple questions coming in from people that want to change career paths into animation. They want to know what's the best way to do that, and what's the best way to let recruiters know that that's what you want to do.
Well, one of the things that you want to do is in your cover letter to make sure that you indicate that you are making a career change, or when you reach out to a recruiter with a note. And also you want to have whatever transferable skills, like let's say that you're a technical, you're a software engineer or something like that, and you're making a transition, you can indicate that. Or if you are in the from an advertising, I career coached a guy who was in advertising industry. He was an art director, and it was easy for him, fairly easy for him to make a transition into being a character designer, because he was using the same skill set, just reimagining it and refocusing his portfolio a little bit. Find out what the roles are in the animation business that would most suit your skill set, and make that transition.
This next
It's
question
possible to do, though.
What kind of jobs do recruiters fill? Is it like staff or just temporary jobs?
Both staff and temporary jobs. A lot of freelance jobs. There might be a project that's only going on for a few months or a few weeks. It really depends on whatever the company needs. So they'll do both.
Let's see here. What would you say are some good entry-level positions in the animation industry?
Well, I started as a production assistant years ago. I'm not a great drawer. I also some rotoscope stuff. Rotoscoping is kind of a more entry-level type of job as far as VFX goes. And in animation, production assistant is a good start to know the whole process. Several people I know started as production assistant. I was production manager on The Simpsons, and they moved from production assistant, and one of them became an animator. One of them became a background designer. One of them became a props designer. A couple of them became producers. So it depends on whatever your greater desire is, but it's a good way to get into a studio, and then to be able to make connections with people that are doing the kind of job that you want to do. So it still works to get in.
As a recruiter, do you ever see someone's work that may not be what you're looking for at that moment, but save the contact information for later in the future?
Oh yes, I have a whole file cabinet full of resumes of people that I have stayed in touch with. I've also, there's a guy I met at SIGGRAPH one year who was originally from Australia, and he had a stack. He was talking to me because he had a stack of reels, about pretty large stack of reels. And he moved them from Australia to the States, hoping that at some point, someday, at some SIGGRAPH, that he would run into these artists. There were about a dozen reels that he carried with him, that he was just hoping he would somehow meet, because he didn't have any contact info on them that he wanted to keep. But I have several reels from way back that I still keep as samples of like good work, and that I show people sometimes. So yes, we all keep some work for possible openings for later, and we always keep track of people with great work, whether we have an application right now available, because who knows, like in a couple of months' time, somebody might be calling me up and asking for exactly that kind of work and that kind of person, and so I'll say, oh yes, I know that person, can send them in now. So yes, I think all of that, all of us keep those.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yes.
It's your permanent record.
Yeah. Probably, possibly not everybody has a whole like lateral file full of resumes of 3 drawers worth, but yes, we do. We keep those.
We talked a little bit before about how important it is to label the job title you want very clearly, so recruiters know what positions you're looking for. This person says that they sometimes have a they sometimes have a hard time finding the correct role or title when it comes to roles in visual development or concept art. Is there some sort of list of job titles, or how can they find that information?
Yeah, and it's also difficult because different studios will call the same different things. So yeah, you can call yourself a concept artist or a visual development person, but at least we know what basic area that we're looking at, rather than, obviously, you might be a color stylist or a visual, viz dev or, previs or whatever, but something in that realm, versus like if it's clear that you're a storyboard artist, then, that's a different role. So yeah, they'll call you different things. They might call you a designer, concept designer, background designer, whatever, but we'll figure it out as long as it's something in that, at least if you are clear in your portfolio what you do.
I've also heard the advice of like, find someone who has the job you want and then see what title they have.
Yes, that works too. Yes. And look at people's, one of the things that's really important is if you are an aspiring, storyboard artist, for example, look at other people that are doing storyboard work and what are they, look at their boards, learn from other people. Look at their portfolios. What do they have posted online? You can learn a lot by looking at other people's stuff.
We got a lot of questions earlier about people trying to apply from overseas, but now we have one from someone who's in the Midwest. Is it necessary for them to move out here to California to get a job?
No, it's not necessary. Especially now, it's not necessary. And I think in the future, it probably still won't be necessary, which is kind of cool. I know this sounds weird, but one of the pluses of this time, we all been suffering a little bit about having to be blocked away by ourselves, but it also gives us a chance to reach out via Zoom to a lot of different people, and to be able to still meet, which is great. But one of the things that's really cool is that in the entertainment industry, at least the animation industry, has found that they can work perfectly well with people from all over, via Zoom and the internet, sending work, by the computer without having to be in-house, which is very awesome. And I think that's going to continue. So I don't know if it's really going to be necessary for people to relocate to LA, but they certainly shouldn't do it now because LA is pretty much locked down. So do not. There's no reason for you to be moving to Los Angeles at this point. Maybe once there's a vaccine and once things are lifted and people are back in-house in studios, possibly it might go back that way, but I really think, I'm hoping that studios will be open to working with people from all over still, and new people. One of the interesting things that happened here, I live here in Meridian, Idaho, and earlier this year, I was recruiting for a serious games company which is located in Boise. And I found them a person that they needed who was living in Florida. So they hired him, and he moved to Idaho right the week before everything shut down. So he actually never got a chance to go into the studio because the entire studio shut down and everybody's working from home. So he hasn't actually met anybody in person yet. He's only met them via Zoom. And he's only been working via Zoom this whole time. So he's happy though that he moved from Florida to Idaho, luckily. But he could have possibly worked. We didn't know. I mean, it was right during that time. So he didn't know that we were going to all be working from home. But yes, for people from the Midwest, you don't have to move. And I don't think you will have to.
Yeah, it's changing landscape.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a quick follow-up question. Would time difference be a problem?
Well, you might have to wake up in the middle of the night to have your meetings, depending upon where you live. Yes, it could be a problem. You might become a night owl, depending upon whether or not your team is meeting via Zoom. It might be at Pacific time, and you are halfway around the world, so you might be up in the middle of the night, meeting with your team. That could be a problem.
This next question is an interesting question. Portfolio format. From a recruiter's perspective, what's the best or easiest way for people to have their portfolios displayed that's easy for you to navigate?
I have a friend who really likes, she likes ArtStation a lot. So that's one place that she goes to often to look at portfolios. But yeah, if you can have it on a website, and we can, if it's easy to navigate, make sure it's easy to navigate.
Do you know any other recruiters that use social media to find new talent?
We all do, and we all check your social media too. So that's one thing. You shouldn't post anything that you wouldn't want your grandmother to see, because we all check social media to see what kind of person you are before they hire you. So yes, we use everything, all the tools.
That might be a good follow-up question. We talked about having the skills or being locally or timely available. But what about personality? What kind of personality tends to do well in the animation industry?
Well, I mean, obviously, since it's a collaborative medium, you need to make sure that you are a collaborator, which means that you're a good listener. They all say must be a team player. Well, it's true, because you're working with somebody, it's usually longer than 8 hours a day. So you really want to be someone that people want to hang out with, right? Somebody who's creative, has good ideas, but also can follow direction. Someone who can, if you're going to work on a show, for example, like The Simpsons or another show like that, your work has to fit in with their work, right? Because you're going to have to be flexible and adaptable. So you're not going to be able to create your own style there. You're going to have work that fits in with that, whatever their style is. So adaptability. But yes, that's one of the reasons why people get interviewed. They know how great you are as far as your work goes, right? They can see it in your portfolio, and they can see what experience you have on your resume. So the only reason why they really interview you is to see if you fit in with the team, which means, what kind of person are you? Are you going to be a team player, right? That's really what's important. It's like what the fit is. That's what they're looking for. So will you fit in?
This next question is asking about like production phases. Does that cause like a hiring season, or is there a hiring season when studios are looking to fill in positions?
A production phase? Well, there's a hiatus often in television production. So there might be a temporary layoff where you're waiting for the show to start up again. But otherwise, there isn't really necessarily a hiring season. So I don't think that there's necessarily a time when you shouldn't be applying. In fact, even during the holidays, you can apply because people are still hiring even during the holidays, or at least they should find out about you even during the holidays. If they're actively recruiting, they're interested in hearing about you.
Now we have this
I've
question in
known
the
people
chat.
to be, sorry, I've known people who've gotten hired between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So yeah.
So just always apply then, no matter what.
Yeah. Yep. Why not?
Right. This next question, or this is from the chat, where someone's saying they're pursuing a 3D animation career, but they only have experience as a 2D animator. Is this a plus or a minus for them?
Experience as a 2D animator is a plus. And also strong, we always know, it's kind of interesting. We always know if someone has really great traditional skills, what we call drawing skills, or a real great sense of lighting or perspective and all that. You can always tell when you see someone's reel, their portfolio, their flat work will usually match in quality. So yeah, it's always a good background to have. So good to have those basic skills. That foundation is really great to have. And I'll be recruiting for 2D animation soon, so always it's good for me to know about 2D animators. I'm glad that people know about it still, and are still being trained in classical animation. It's important. It's not really ever going to go away. I mean, it hasn't, and I'm sure it will have a revival soon, I'm hoping.
Do you know of any other websites you might recommend for displaying your portfolio? This person lists Wix or WordPress as examples.
Oh yeah, having your own website is good. There's also Behance. What are the other ones that I look at? Trying to think. If that person will email me, I will look. So email me at pamrecruit@87, and I will respond to you with other sources for posting website material, for posting your portfolio, if you don't like using ArtStation.
Yeah, we're getting really close to the end of our time here, but before we go, you mentioned your Gmail. Is there any place else that's a good place for everyone here to connect with you and ask you more questions? Or
oh yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm going to be doing my LinkedIn session tomorrow also, if you want to learn more about LinkedIn. But yes, there, and you can also, I have a Twitter feed, and I also have Facebook. So anywhere you can find me.
Awesome. Well, I think that's going to be the end of our time for today. So Pamela, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for answering, let's see, over 40 questions in the course of an hour.
Oh, very good. I'm glad that we had questions to ask. That's excellent. Okay, and if anybody has any questions that they didn't get answered, feel free to email me at pamrecruit@87@gmail. Okay, I hope you can read that. So yes, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate. And don't hesitate to reach out to recruiters either, because they want to hear from you, believe me. That's how they make their money, is by finding people like yourself. So, and it's kind of remarkable that people get paid to help people find jobs, and help them find, help companies find people. So don't hesitate to reach out to people. And there's a lot of us out there. There's a number of people. So Isla Abramson is one of them in New York City. And Fringe Talent is another one. Rochelle Lewis is another person. So besides myself, I mean, those are all independents. And then of course, there's all the people that work for studios. So yeah,
Awesome.
it's a good
Thank
time
you
to be in
again.
animation. Thank you. Thanks you, Matt. Appreciate your help.
Before you head out, I think we have one question. Is it pamrecruit@gmail or pamrecruit87@gmail?
pamrecruit87@gmail.com.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Okay.
And thank you again for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Hope it was helpful. Okay.